Today is May 21st, 2024. My name is Alexia Orengo Green, and I am interviewing Pnina Sharf on behalf of the USC Shoah Foundation. The interview is taking place in Santa Monica, California, US. The language of the interview will be English. Pnina, who do we have with us today here?
You have here my son Albert, my oldest son, my son Jesse, his wife Stacy, and their son Jonah. He's the youngest son. There's the younger son.
And can you tell me what it was like growing up with a mother who was a Holocaust survivor and a grandmother who was a Holocaust survivor?
Well, Albert, you want to go first?
Sure. I'm Albert again, oldest son. I remember being fed a lot of food all the time, and if I didn't finish, they would not scold me, but encourage me to finish all the food. So I was a very good eater.
Right.
There was always a sense of anxiety at home. I'm not sure where it came from, but as an adult, I realized that my grandparents and both parents probably have PTSD, which I inherited part of that, and that has done me really good as far as survival skills. I became an adult cardiologist because I was worried about dying after knowing that I'm named after my mother's father, who died in the gas chambers or fighting. I'm not sure what happened.
Fighting.
So it was difficult, and it was a blessing to be alive. It was a blessing that she survived, and the big lesson I learned from my mother and grandmother is that they didn't agree with what happened, but they were able to accept what happened, and then to live with dignity and courage, to get up and survive and continue life and have children and continue the Jewish culture. And of course, they always stress the importance of us having a country, and without a country, this will happen again. So those are the lessons that I learned, and my mother was really good at teaching others about walking with dignity and courage no matter what bad things happen, because her bad things were a lot worse than mine. But the PTSD I'm working on and anxiety and all that stuff, but you know, there's a lot of blessings that I even have an opportunity to have been born. So that's how I saw it, and my parents were great parents. They tried their best, but there was a lot that they didn't tell me about that happened, I assume, because I was always, there was a little bit of emotional crossover where I became taking care of her emotional needs, which is not healthy, but that's what happens sometimes when you're 5 years old and your mom's always crying and stuff like that. And my Israeli father was working or playing cards or whatever he was doing. So that's been my experience, and it's a pleasure to be here today.
I go next. I'm not going to say my experience was the opposite, but I was a terrible eater as a kid, and the truth is, I'm not going to say it was a completely stress-free childhood, but it was largely a stress-free childhood from my perspective. And I always had the knowledge that my mom was a survivor and my grandmother was a survivor. And at some point I realized that my grandfather was not a survivor, but was killed. And the lesson that I took out of it was that I felt like nothing bad could happen to me, that enough bad had happened to my family and to my people that I would not suffer. And like Albert, I learned the importance of having a country, and I felt like I had two countries, the United States and Israel. I agree. My parents did their best. I think my mom was a fantastic nurturer. Whether that was a function of her being a survivor or not, I really don't know. I can't imagine her any other way, but great childhood, great mother.
Thank you.
So for me,
That's when I was a child. I'm not talking about now.
so for me, marrying into the family, I just remember the first time I came to their house in New Jersey. It was all about the food. Her and her husband Mo's tomato garden, best tomatoes I ever had. I did not have any close relatives that were survivors, but I have a lot of family in Israel who were there before the 40s. So I felt a bond to Israel, and having the Sharf family in my life made me more connected to Israel and more appreciative of people's pains. But what came out of Pnina and her mother and her surviving is
So
All of you?
growing up, my father would make sure that me and my older brothers would visit my Savta Pnina and her mother Savta Sarah every single weekend. And there's, when I was younger, I kind of just heard these stories and it went in one ear and out the other. But there was a point, probably 13 or 14, where obviously I started learning about the Holocaust in school and things, and then also realizing that these are people that I've known my whole life that went through this actually. And so I'm very lucky that they lived so long, that my Savta Sarah lived until I was, I think, 15 or so, and I got to be able to know be able to actually remember her stories. And now I may still hear the same stories every other time I visit my Savta Pnina, but that's okay because it's worth it. And now that I hear my Uncle Albert blaming the anxiety on the Holocaust, I'm glad that I can blame mine on that too. So
Blame me.
So I gave you the opportunity to visit Savta Sarah and Savta Pnina. Savta Sarah is my mother's mother, my grandmother, our grandmother, great-grandmother.
You mentioned growing up hearing stories. Can you all talk a little bit about how it was that, or if growing up you heard Pnina's story?
Yeah. Do you want to go first again, Albert? You're the firstborn.
You go ahead. Jeff.
Okay. So I would hear stories from my grandmother and my mother. Sometimes I would hear different stories about different events. Sometimes I would hear stories about the same events. And I remember as a kid being very cynical and wanting, and as an adult being very cynical and wanting to make sure that the two stories correlated when they related to the same issue. And they always did. I mean, my mother's stories and my grandmother's stories, even if they were told weeks or months apart, always were consistent with each other. They were pretty G-rated when we were kids, and they became less G-rated as time went on. I didn't know that the person that I thought was my grandfather was actually not my mother's father until I was probably 13 years old, 14 years old or so.
Really?
And
Older, I think.
it was a shock to me. No, I remember it was 1976.
I thought you were 15.
Maybe Albert
I was
was
14
15.
years old
Okay.
when it happened. And that was a shock to me. And I got to find out what happened to her father, which was a surprise to me, but made sense afterwards. And look, they weren't scary, the stories. They weren't horrifying. I mean, they were, I think, designed for whatever age I was at the time. But I mean, they were almost, it goes back to the same theme. I mean, I felt like nothing bad could happen to me by comparison. And from that perspective, I thought they were actually very healthy to hear. It was very healthy to hear those stories. Abraham?
Can I mention one story in particular? Yeah, I remember the story of my true grandfather Albert that died. Obviously was a tragedy, but my grandmother worked in a work camp where they were making bullets to be used against everybody that was attacking Germany. And my mother was young. She was 2-3 years old. And I asked her, how did you survive? And she goes, I don't know, but the grandmother told me there was one story where they were taking away the children, and she was very small. And my grandmother said, no, you can't take her away. You're gonna have to kill me. So instead of killing her, they took the butt of the gun and knocked out all her teeth to my grandmother and let my mother live. And all the other kids were thrown into the pit and shot. And my mother was smart enough and said, "Why did you kill everybody to one of the German soldiers?" And he didn't answer her and just gave her a Hershey's bar. And I don't know how she survived alone in the barracks while her mother went to work all day between, I don't know, 2, 3 to 4 or 5 years old. And I'll remember my mom, telling me a story where it was cold and she thought there was a piece of chocolate and she put it in her mouth, but it was feces. Frozen
shit.
feces. And I mean, it's just like, I don't know how she made it. I don't know how she survived.
That's
it's
why I cook a lot.
it's a miracle. I mean, she was alone in the barracks at 2, 3 years old. I don't know how she did this.
Well,
So it's really miraculous that we're even here today.
I was just 4 when the war ended. Exactly.
It's about, I mean, we eat tons of matzo ball soup and krepelach and all. The food was really good growing up. That were, that's how we treat anxieties with food.
No. Well, I didn't want
Jewish
you to be hungry.
penicillin. Jewish
Yeah,
penicillin.
Jewish penicillin. That's
Better
the
than
chicken.
alcohol.
You're not kidding.
Oh, right.
That's what they said in the Congress.
Yeah.
Jewish chicken soup.
When I had stress and stuff, after having a large family and a lot of stress with my profession and stuff, I started drinking alcohol a little bit too much, and I had to stop doing that. I don't blame it on my mom or the Holocaust, but it's just, part of my
Albert has 9 children. That's what he means by.
Yeah, we're making up for the Holocaust.
Yeah.
Separate
Stories for you guys?
I mean, I just consider myself extremely lucky to have been able to hear these stories, like I said, just in person as opposed to out of a book. I think not a lot of people get to say that, especially my age and younger. So yeah, I'm just very lucky.
Well, you have the right parents. They're good human beings.
I have
thank you.
some of the same stories, so I'm not gonna repeat.
And finally, what are your thoughts about Pnina sharing her story today with us?
It's about time. I'm very happy that she's sharing these stories. She shared them before. I think if you went through our entire videotape collection and you put them together, we'd come up with something, but not in an organized or professional fashion. So I think it's important for future generations to hear firsthand accounts. I don't think this is not going to go on for too many more years, and I am thrilled that whoever's interested will get the opportunity to hear these stories, and hopefully my grandkids, her great grandkids, Albert's kids, and hopefully in the future other kids will get to hear these stories as well, from somebody who they knew of firsthand or knew of firsthand, and I'm thrilled.
I feel exactly the same way.
Thank you.
I'm very excited that this is happening, and I'm looking forward to watching her testimony.
I can't wait to hear what she has to say.
And I just want to add one more thing. I'm very honored that you guys are doing this, and I'm really impressed with my mom's bravery and courage right now, and her dignity. And she walks in, even though it's probably really hard for her to do this. I'm really proud of you, Mom.
And being quiet, you mean?
We're all proud of you.
Thank you. And I'm proud of my kids, all of you. And remember, you married Jesse, you're mine too.
And we have a younger brother, Mark, and he has 3 children as well. He's a lawyer in Los Angeles somewhere.
Yeah, I think this has been a long time coming, and I'm glad that this is happening. Her mother did this, I don't know how long ago, but long time
In the
ago.
90s.
20, 30 years ago.
In the 90s, yeah.
And I've always remembered watching those videos, and I think it's time. I've even considered just borrowing a camera from work and just sitting down and doing this, but I'm glad that people who have experience with this very specific subject matter are doing this.
Very well said.
Thank you.
Thank
so
God.
much. Thank you.
We can move now?
Can you introduce yourself?
I am Pnina Sharf, born Paula Rosenzweig in Ghetto Dęblin, Poland. When I was about a year old, they took us all to the camp, Częstochowa. It was a labor camp. Naturally, I didn't work. My mom worked, and my whole family that was there, everybody worked. It was ammunition factories. In fact, Częstochowa still exists, and I'll tell you how I know. And the buildings that were the factories are still there. The cobblestone streets are still there that I remember. My father was taken to Sobibor when I was 17 months old. But my mother had to work naturally, my grandmother, my aunts, everybody worked, and I was all alone with the other children. And all we did was just what children do. We played. I don't know how we knew to play, but we did. Where was I? In Częstochowa, yeah. One of the workers at that camp that also moved to Israel. We moved to Israel in 1948. Her son, one of her sons, has a TV show in Israel. And she always told him about the camp. So he took a crew of, like him, photographers and people that do that work, to the camp. And that's how I know that the camp still is the same. And the buildings are factories, but not producing bullets and airplane parts for the Nazis.
And when did your name change to Pnina?
Where what?
When did your name change to Pnina?
In Israel. I was named after my grandmother, Pearl. Pearl is in English and German, but in Hebrew, Pearl means Pnina, and Pnina means Pearl. And I wanted to be an Israeli, so I changed it.
And when was it that you were born?
Pardon?
When was it that you were born?
I was born actually December 10th, 1940. When my stepfather adopted me, he said 10/10/1940, and nobody paid attention. That's how it is. But my real birthday is December 10th, same year.
And can you tell me a little bit about your father?
My real father? Well, there's only one real father. I know that he was a history professor at the University of Warsaw, very distinguished. My whole family, from both sides, were very learned people, very distinguished. And from my father's side, they were also very rich. And he didn't get to live a long life because Hitler wouldn't allow it. And that's about it.
And
I don't know little details because I never asked. Because my mom remarried. She had another husband and children, and I didn't want to butt in and make her feel bad. That's it.
And what was his name?
Albert. I named my son after him.
And-
Albert Rosenzweig.
And where was he born?
He was born in Poland. What city? I think Lublin. It was a big city. And he went to, school and university and so on.
And you mentioned that he was a historian. Do you know?
Yeah, he studied to be a historian, and that's what he taught, history.
And do you know what type of history he was interested
Mainly
in?
international.
And can you tell me a little bit about your father's side of the family?
Sure. Well, my grandmother Miriam, she had 3 daughters and 1 son, my father. The 3 daughters survived the war. One of them moved to Austria, to Vienna, Austria, and she moved with her. I actually lived with her almost a year. My aunts, just a regular life, whatever. Nobody's alive anymore. I mean, I'm not going to talk about little details of their life because it doesn't really matter. But basically, they were very, beautiful people, the whole family, and intelligent, as I said. And that's it.
And can you tell me about your mother?
Hmm. My mother was born in Kozienice. Kozienice, how do you spell it? K-O-G-Z, E-N-T-S-A, I guess, Kozienice, or C-A. The Latin languages are so different. For instance, what happened?
Tell me about your mother.
Well, my mom came from a rabbinical family, and one of her great-grandfathers was very known. He's in history books. He was the Maggid, M-A-G-I-D, of Kozienice, from that town. And the story goes, in history books, I read it, that, they were all from Poland. When the Polish king, Kazimierz, I can't pronounce their name, Poland was attacked by the Russians, by the Cossacks, always. And he needed help, and none of his advisors knew what to do. And he heard of my great-grandfather. He went to him and said, I'm at a loss. I have no idea what to do. I was told that you're the smartest man alive. And the king told my grandfather the story. And he thought and thought. Now remember, he was just a rabbi. He had also 9 children, and they lived in a place like this. 1 bedroom, and I guess everything was a bedroom. But now, I don't know how well you know the Bible, but in the Bible there are wars since the Jews left Egypt. The war with the Amalekites, the war of Jericho, Joshua fought, the wars of King David, and the war of Deborah. She was a general. On Mount Tabor she fought. The Egyptians wanted to come in from the north, and the Syrians from the south, the Syrians from the north, and she figured out what to do, and she won the war. So if you read deeply and you understand what they did, he told them exactly what was written in the Bible. And he went and he did it, and he won the war. And as a reward, he gave him a palace. He said, you have 9 children. He said, I don't take any rewards from people. No money, no houses, nothing. I do it because God blessed me with that ability to help. Whoever wants my help can get it for free. And that's it. So that's on my mother's side. I think it's a good story. Better than business people.
And what was your mother's name?
Sarah.
And how did your parents meet?
My parents, I think I know. Actually, one of my cousins told me they lived in Warsaw. My mom's mom, Pearl, died at the age of, my mom was 12, I remember. She died from breast cancer, which I had too, breast cancer. Anyhow, her father remarried after a year of mourning, married a woman with 3 kids. They were 4 kids, my mom, my sister, and 2 brothers. And she couldn't stand it. And she knew that her aunt lived, my grandmother's sister, she lived in Warsaw. So at the age of 16, she ran away to Warsaw. And my father, since he lived in Warsaw when he was in school and then a teacher, he used to come there because my mother's aunt, her husband, was related to my father's family. It does happen in small places. Anyhow, they met. And that's it.
And what did your mom do for a living when she was in Warsaw at 16 years old?
Yeah, she did. No, she didn't. I don't think so. But then the war broke out. She was 18 or so. I don't remember her working there. My mom was a bit hard worker. When we come to America, I'll tell you. What did she do? Maybe she went to school, I think she told me. Yeah. She went to school, to high school. She wanted to finish. See, a lot of Jewish religious people didn't believe in studying other languages than Hebrew. But my family from both sides wanted to know other languages. I mean, it's a big world. So she went to a regular school, Polish school. And she studied. I have a headache. And that's it. Then the war. And then we went to Israel in 1948 and stayed there for 10 years. And then her husband couldn't find, he could never find anything to do. I guess he didn't want to work. We came to America, and my mom, because she was a good cook, opened up a small place on Hollywood Boulevard and Western. And then they became partners with somebody else across the street from the farmer's market. You know what the farmer's market is? There's a big shopping center. And there was a place for sale, and they merged, and she worked like a horse. He always complained, and she always worked.
And kind of going back to your parents' life before the war, did you ever hear how their house was before the start of the war?
My father?
Yeah, for your mother's and your father's house,
They
where
didn't
they
have
lived.
a house, they had an apartment. You have to understand, Hitler came to Poland in 1938. So people would just live and hide, actually. I was born in the basement of where they lived, and my grandmother delivered me. So that's me. There was no real life. My father worked. I know he became a businessman instead of, because he couldn't go back to university. And because he was a Jew. Boy, did they lose out on a lot of smart people, those idiots. Whoever hates the Jews loses out. And too bad. That's about it. I can tell you about my grandmother, great-grandmother. My great-grandmother, Rose, she was a millionaire, but she made the money. She also had 9 kids. She had an idea, and she was a tough cookie. She did it, but then Hitler came and took all the money and everything else.
And where did your parents live before the start of the war?
They moved to Demblin. That's where I was born, Demblin, Demblin. I don't know why, I never asked. But there was, in between, there was no time for real living. You had to hide. In fact, when I was a baby, my mother told me, or my cousin actually told me, she was in charge of shutting me up, because the Nazis were looking for people that had babies to kill them. And she had to put her hand on my mouth. She was only 4 and I was a baby. It was worse than terrible. You can't begin to imagine. And why? And we are the chosen people, chosen to suffer, I guess. If there is a God, I want him to come down here. I'll have a few questions for him, or her, him. Usually, a woman wouldn't do that. Only men can be so mean. Sorry.
And do you know about any of the friendships that your parents might have had before of the war?
No, but that's too bad I didn't tell it in front of my kids. We are very strange people. I heard more singing in our house in Israel. And also in Germany. We lived in Germany 2 years. 'Cause all the survivors used to come to our house because my mom was a great cook and baker. So, and not many people had family. They were loners. And they looked for a family. Our house was full of people always. And there was singing always. Real singing. And dancing. They were full of life. You know, I can't understand it. How come the Nazis weren't able to destroy the life in them, the will to live? Can you put that in writing? Okay. And then when we were in Israel, I was 8 years old. Every Friday night, there were like 30, 40 people in ours. We had a 2-room apartment like this. But my parents were the only ones that had a record player, which nowadays you don't have them. And they had all the dancing music from South America and from, I don't know where they got it. Well, there were stores. And people were dancing. My mom always baked. She didn't serve them food because it was too expensive. But a cake, like that cake, Rachel, that you like. And they were happy people. And that's why I'm sad, but I'm very happy. Because I met my husband. Are we there yet?
Not yet. You mentioned that your mother came from a religious family. Were both of your parents religious, or did they wanted to raise you religious?
No, my mother, they were religious, my mother's family. My father's family were more continental, which meant everybody went to universities in Vienna or in Germany. They did business with Paris. They were really continental people. They ate kosher meat. They didn't eat pork. But they didn't wear the hats and the beards and all that, no. They didn't feel the need for it.
And did your parents have a connection with Zionism, or did they know?
Yes, definitely. Even before the war.
Did they know anyone that had gone to Palestine in the 1930s before the war?
Not my family. We know some people, but they weren't family. Good for them.
And what are your earliest memories of the war?
When I was about 2 years old.
And can you describe the visual memories?
I don't understand how people can be so mean. They would shoot somebody because in their eye, the Nazis, they didn't like him. And then they would send their dogs to take care of the body. Okay? How could you take it? The German Shepherd, they're known. The German Shepherd. Is that a good memory? But I'm not gonna cry. I'm stronger than that.
And going a little bit back, how did your parents experience the start of the war?
What kind of a question is that? They were like the other Jews. They were like sheep, like cattle. Not even horses, like cattle. Beaten to go to the slaughter. It's not even a fair question. Of course, with my father, they sent him to Sobibor, which was a death camp, And over there, do you know about the movie, Jeff, The 400 of Sobibor? Partisans. He joined them. And then I'm very proud of him that he killed some Nazis.
And once they moved to Dublin, when was it that they were moved to? How was the transition? Do you know how
There
it
was
was
no transition. When I was, how old, less than a year, or a year, because I have a picture of myself as 1 year old. My mother knitted a dress for me, and after that they took us. How? I don't remember. But don't forget, the ghetto was also run by the Nazis. And it was nearby, so they just took us.
And you had any other family members that were there in the ghetto with you?
Yeah, my father's family.
And I know that you had briefly started to talk a little bit about your life in the ghetto. Can you expand a little bit more on that?
Not in the camp. The ghetto is not a destruction camp. It's just a place where all the Jews are. That I don't remember because I was only a year when we went to the camp. There I remember things. And I remember when they took my father. He always held me. And the last word that he said was my name, Paula. It's in Polish or German, Paula. Anything starts with a P, I guess. But I remember this incident in the picture, like yesterday. And I was very tough. Like this, I was sitting and talking very fresh to him, to the Nazi. It worked.
And in the ghetto, you mentioned that your mother gave birth in the basement. Can you speak? Did you hear any stories of how it was, that experience?
Yeah, I'll tell you how it was. My father was there, my grandmother, my great-grandmother, and one of the aunts. You know, we had to be together. And she was still yelling at my father to boil hot water. And he said, why? Why do you want to drink hot water? He didn't realize that they needed for the birth, you know, a hot towel or whatever. But she told me that it's fun, because it was funny to her. And as I told you, my grandmother delivered me. One of her sisters was with her. And lucky I came out okay. That's it.
And before you mentioned the children in the ghetto too.
In the camp, not the ghetto.
Oh, that was in the camp.
The labor camp.
Can you then talk a little bit about how it was that your family survived in the ghetto?
In the camp. Ghetto is a place where certain people congregate. It could be Spanish people in one area, white people in this area, black people in that. When you create a place, sort of invisible borders, but only certain people live there, it becomes a ghetto. It isn't just for Jews; it's for anybody. The camp.
Oh.
What was the question?
I meant So before you were taken to the camp, so how
I don't remember that.
Did you hear any stories about how it was life there when you were younger?
You mean before I was a year old?
Yes. So from your mother, did you hear any stories about how was life there?
It was very tough, very tough. We weren't. First of all, I wasn't allowed to exist. And if you were able-bodied, like my parents were, and even my grandmother, she was 40, 42. My mother was 20 when she had me. So if you're able-bodied, they let you live, and then they know who to take to work in the camp. We didn't have a life. You know, those questions are suited for people here in Los Angeles, not there. We didn't have a life. Nobody had a life. No matter who you will interview. None of them, and some of them were worse off. Much worse. Like in Sobibor and in Dachau and in Auschwitz. Of course it was worse. They took him there to kill them. At least we lived. Why did they keep the children alive so long? I don't know. But why did they shoot them at the end? And the Russians were nearby. I even remember at the end, the very end, bombs and fires and noise, and I screamed and I was afraid. Those were the Russians. Thank God they came and saved us. And only 4 months later, the Americans were able to go through the West, from France to Germany and so on. But I'm not talking like a survivor, am I? I don't feel sorry. I do feel sorry for people that don't know how to stand up for their rights and for themselves. If anybody wants to hurt you, you hurt him back first. Remember the Bible, an eye for an eye. And I don't believe that God will help me. He'll help me if I help myself.
And you mentioned that you and your mother were taken to a camp.
That was the camp.
Can you tell me the name of the camp?
Częstochowa.
And do you know how you got there?
We walked. We didn't get a limo or an Uber. We walked. They treated us like cattle, I'm telling you. Literally. Not just us. We were the lucky ones.
And do you remember how long the walk was, or
No,
did you?
I don't. I was carried. I was a year old.
And was it only your mother and you who made it to the camp, or did you?
No, there were hundreds of people.
Do you had any other family members with you there?
Yes. My father, my grandmother, my father's sisters.
And how was the concentration camp?
How was it?
How was the? Do you remember?
There were 5,000 women in one barrack, one place. There weren't any kids were not allowed to be there. So my mom took the 5th bunk. I called it the penthouse. And every time a Nazi would come in to check if it's clean or whatever, I don't know what he checked, my mom would put her hand on my mouth and tell me to be quiet. One time I was sick and tired of being quiet, and I started screaming, I want to see the man that kills the children. And he heard me. And he wanted to see me, and I stood up. He said, here I am. I was maybe, 2 years, at the most 2 years, maybe before 2 years. And I was an innocent child, of course, and he took me down. And you know what he did? And that's a miracle. We were 5,000 women in one place, one little black stove, wooden stove that you see in Vermont. He told one of the soldiers to bring a bed with double pillows, double blankets, and he said, Paula will sleep here near the stove. Miracle? Okay.
And do you remember your mother's reaction when this happened?
Yeah, in the beginning she was scared to death. And then all the women started yelling at her, because the punishment was always killing everybody. And then when they saw this, everybody shut up.
I know you were quite young, but do you remember how you felt in that moment that, you being so young, you standing up to the officer?
I don't remember that, but I remember very proud of myself. That's all.
And were there other children in the
Yeah,
camp?
sure. I mean, just in that picture you see them. And there were more probably, I don't remember.
And
And I never cried. Never. I told my boys the only one made me cry was their father when he would yell at me. But also because I had cancer and I wasn't feeling well, things. Anyhow, what else?
and when
Look, in the camp, I remember things like once I wanted to drink and there was a well. I fell into the well and stayed there the whole day. Till somebody found me, I was frozen to death, supposedly. And there was only one doctor in the camp, a Jewish doctor. And of course, he had to be for the Nazis, for the bosses. And that was the beginning of penicillin. Penicillin was discovered in 1929. This was 1941, let's say, too. He stole a penicillin shot, endangered his life. He knew that I had infection everywhere, especially down here. And he gave me the shot. Here I am. And he survived too, because we met him after the war.
And how was that experience, meeting him after the war?
What do you mean experience? To meet him or to get the shot?
Oh, to meet him after the war.
Wonderful. My mom just hugged him and kissed him on the street.
And when in the camp, you mentioned that your mom was working. What
Sure.
type of work did she do in the camp?
Well, they all did mainly. They made bullets, I don't know for what, for tanks, for mortar, I have no idea. And they made airplane parts. So, and she once told me she worked in the field. What did she do? Picking, I don't know what.
And while she was working, will you go there with her, or
No,
were
I
you
was roaming the streets of Częstochowa, talking to my friends.
Can you tell me a little bit about your friends?
No, I can't. I really can't. I know there were crybabies, and I couldn't stand crying.
Were they a similar age of you?
Yeah, yeah.
And what do you think of the camp as being a child?
To think of it?
How
Don't ask that question. It's not a good question. I tell you why. First of all, it was terrible. But a little child at the age of 2, 3, I didn't know any better. I didn't think about it. That's it. It's not a good question to ask anybody unless they were older. But it's also not nice to ask this question. What could you think about it? It was a death camp, for heaven's sakes. Why would I think anything else except being afraid? That's it. Anybody, whether he's 1 year old or 50 years old. I used to see people being beaten up. In fact, my stepfather was beaten up once, terrible. I didn't see it, but I heard stories. A child remembers only good things or terrible things. Yeah. Had I been beaten up, or I remember being hungry. Yeah, I remember.
did your mom try to ever explain it to you while you were in the camp?
No, not in those days. She worked 18 hours a day, honey. You know, this wasn't America. This was a death camp. And in those days, people didn't talk to children like that. There was no, oh, honey, come on. It was either you live or you die. My mom was a very good mom. She protected me. And she couldn't do more than that. It was impossible.
And as a child in the camp, did you experience any massacres while being there?
Well, yeah, shooting all those children is a massacre.
Can you tell us a little bit?
No, I don't want to talk about it. I mean, you can understand it.
And did you celebrate any birthdays during the war?
What?
Did you
Don't ask it, please. No. We were happy to just wake up in the morning and being able to go to sleep at night and having a piece of bread. Birthdays.
And what do you remember about the day you were liberated?
A lot of singing. A lot of singing and dancing. Not me, but I was helped, you know. I remember when we went from Poland to Germany, because Germany all of a sudden accepted us, we took a train, but it was like a cattle train without a roof, and it was packed. I mean, people were on top of each other, and my stepfather threw me over, because they couldn't possibly, but my mom managed to get in, and he did too, and they found me. Somebody caught me from. That I remember vividly. I also remember my first good meal. My mom bought a can of bacon, raw bacon. It's called szynkę in Polish, with 3 loaves of bread. And I was 4 years old. My eyes were bigger than my face. I was so starved. Okay? And I ate it in one sitting. And that really revived me, because a lot of kids and also adults died from tuberculosis.
And where did the train take you?
We went to Berlin, I remember. You know, my boys have this kind of memory, especially Jesse that was sitting here. You remember things when he was a year old. Thank God, good things. I remember being in Berlin right after it was bombed, and my mom and her fiancé, I guess you call him, and his whole family survived, not the father, the mother and 7 brothers and sisters. And I remember them being happy that Berlin was, you know, bombed. So we knew we were safe.
And after
that we went to Bavaria. I have no idea why. I never asked why. To a town named Ansbach. Ansbach, A-N-S-B-A-C-H. And there was a DP camp over there too, on top of the hill, but we never stayed at the DP camp. I don't know how my mom made money. Well, I figured it out later, because there were a lot of American soldiers, and she did business with them. She bought cigarettes from them, sold it to the Germans, which really, chocolate, American chocolate, American chocolate, and sold it. Let's say she bought it for $1, I'm just assuming, and sold it for $2, and so on and so on. She was always the businesswoman.
And before you went to Bavaria, when you were in Berlin, do you remember how?
No. We were just traveling, yeah. Nothing.
And you mentioned that there was a DP camp in the town that you were.
Yeah, some relatives stayed over there. And there was a school up there. It was literally on a high hill. And I used to walk there. I was already 5. Up the hill in those days. Can you imagine now you're letting your 5-year-old? It was a distance, it was a few kilometers. I went to school over there.
And how was the experience of living outside of the camp but then going to the camp?
We had a good time. We had a beautiful place and a lot of people and a lot of singing and a lot of apple cake, Rachel. My mom always made that cake and other cakes with other fruits. And And we had two pear trees, and we had an apple tree.
And you mentioned that
Life was pretty good.
And can you tell me a little bit more about the interactions with the American soldiers? Or do you remember your mom with the children?
No, I didn't go with her. No, she did by herself. We had a maid, and she always used to stand by the window. Maria was her name. Hey, Americano, hey, boy, Americano boy. And, they would whistle at her and whatever. I don't remember anything, no. I was too young.
And do you remember anything about that where you lived in?
Yeah.
Can you describe it to me?
It was a beautiful building, beautiful, beautiful apartment with a garden and just a dream. But I wanted to go to Israel. I heard a lot of people talking about it. So we went to another war. But at least that war was where you can fight.
And while in Bavaria, did you had any friends?
Yeah, I always had friends. Don't ask me their name, please.
No.
But one of them was a cousin, a distant cousin. But yeah, I always made friends. Just like here, all my neighbors are friends. In fact, I asked one of the girls to come in, and she didn't. Maybe she felt that she would, not be in the right place, which is true. Anyhow, what else?
And how was it going to school in the DP camp?
Wonderful. I was a happy child. Interesting, isn't it? I remember things, but I was happy. But one day I was playing on the street in Ansbach. I was 5.5, and one of the German kids called me a dirty Jew in German, "Du verfluchte Jude." And I ran in crying, and I said, "Ma, I want to go to Israel now. Not tomorrow, now." Well, we didn't go now, but it took a few weeks or months, I don't remember, and we went.
And outside of the camp, were there other Jewish families that...
Out of which camp?
Outside of the DP camp.
Yeah, we lived outside of the DP camp.
Were there other Jewish families?
Yes, a lot. The DP camp was mostly Jews that came from Russia or, I don't know, another place. I know my cousins came from Russia, so I assume, I don't know. I was too young to ask. By then I was already old, I was 5. I didn't think of asking.
And at this time, had your mother already married your stepfather?
I was at their wedding when I was 5 years old. I'll never forget it.
Can you tell me a little bit about that?
Yeah, I ran all over the place, and there's a lot of survivors. Everybody loved me. We used to run it under the tables. But did I mind? Yes. One incident, before we came to Germany, we were in a place called Lublin. We weren't long over there. And they got an apartment, 2 rooms, 4 couples lived in it. Well, one room was the size like this, and my mom took a rope, divided it into 4 rooms, 4 beds for 4 couples. And there was no running hot water, so they used to boil the water and, wash in the room. And they were naked. My mom was 24, 25, and he was 27. And he started messing with her. And I got panicky. I got so angry. I told him, "Don't touch her. She's my mother, and she belongs to my father." I'll never forget that. How did I know? Believe me, our TV didn't work in that time. Nobody told me stories. Nobody told me anything about it. But I knew my father, and I knew he was a stranger. Therefore, I stayed with one man. I married him at 17. And no matter how much he yelled and bitched and whatever he wanted to do, I said, no other man will be my children's father. Of course, my mom couldn't help it. I didn't blame her. I blamed him, the stepfather.
And they got married back then.
In Germany, in Ansbach, yeah.
And where was it that they meet? Did they meet in the camp, or did they meet outside of?
No, they met in their working in the labor camp. I guess we're almost at the end, right?
And what did he do for a living?
Who?
Your stepfather.
Nothing. He relied on my mom's brain.
And you mentioned that you always wanted to go to Israel.
Mm-hmm.
When was it that that decision was made? Had it already been discussed a long time beforehand, or?
No. I was a baby. Come on. It's just I heard people talk about Palestine, about Israel, and the war coming, and the British over there, and whatever. I knew how bad the Jews had it. I just understood it. And now I know where my kids got it from. Knowing and understanding. I have a great-grandson, he's 3.5. The things he knows, you'll be shocked. So I guess I just knew because I heard things. I listened to the grown-ups talk.
And did your mother or your stepfather had any friends that were already there before you went?
Yeah, my aunt was there. My father's sister, the young one, was there. Where was two of them, I think. Regina too. I don't remember. I just remember one of them. In fact, she passed away during COVID. She was 97. Kenya. I was the closest to her.
And do you remember or know how your mother and your stepfather arranged the travel to go there?
No. How would I know that?
And how was it arriving there?
To me, it was nice. It was hard. It was very difficult. It was during the war, and it was very, very difficult. But we managed. We survived.
And where did you live when you were there?
Tel Aviv, near Jaffa, near Yaffo.
And how was life in Israel that you had?
I loved it.
Can you tell me a little bit about?
I'll tell you a lot. It wasn't luxurious, but there was always food. I went to school. I excelled. You know, I picked up the language in like a couple months. I don't remember not knowing Hebrew. I went to high school there, and then I met my husband, and that was it.
And do you remember the transition being difficult?
No, not for me. Not for anybody, really. We were almost like gypsies. I have such a headache. Oof.
Would you like to take a break? Would you like to take a break?
How much longer do we have?
We're almost.
Okay, let's finish.
Yeah.
I'll just take a sip. Okay, boss? You can show me with drinking. Okay. Okay, go ahead.
And can you tell me a little bit about the apartment or house that you lived in when you were in Tel Aviv?
It was an Arabic house. It was nice. It was okay. Nothing to write home about. But you have to understand, after the concentration camp, everything was good. So.
And here's where you met your husband. Am I?
I met my husband February 1, 1958. Write it down. It's important. I was going to visit my friends in a kibbutz near in the Galilee. So how was it called? The Sea of Galilee, yeah, where Jesus was fishing. I had 2 friends with me from school, and it was a Saturday. We didn't have money for a taxi. Buses were not riding on Shabbat, so we hitchhiked, and he stopped, and that was the beginning and the end of it. He asked me to marry him the same day.
Really?
Uh-huh. And I looked at him and I said, "He must be cuckoo, that man." And I said, "Well, what if I say yes?" He said, "Good." He took me out the same evening and came to my mother's house. Well, my stepfather was already in the States. Next morning, and said, "My name is so-and-so, I'm in love with Pnina and I want to marry her." And she also thought he was crazy. She said, "Okay." Everybody said okay, but nobody meant it. But I meant it. He was good for me. He was my father figure, my caretaker, my everything. He was 6 years older. I was very mature. When I was 17, when I was 16, I went to Vienna by myself on a ship, on a train from Genoa to Vienna, lived there, and then came back by myself because I hated it over there.
How long were you in Vienna for?
About 8-9 months. I didn't want to stay longer.
Did you have people that you knew in Vienna?
Pardon?
Did you had people that you knew
Yeah,
in
my
Vienna?
grandmother and one of my father's sisters and her family. In fact, my cousins I'm still in touch with from Vienna. It was very beautiful there. I had a great life, but it wasn't for me.
And what was your husband's name?
Moshe. Moshe.
And how long after Moshe proposed did you get married?
Well, we had to come here because my stepfather was here and I needed his signature. So we came here, we got married, and there is the evidence behind you from the courthouse. It was July 17, 58. And he had to go back because he had a business to sell and for 1 month only. But somebody told us, if you're smart, I had a green card. And if he marries you, you can bring him over. And so we did.
And did your mother remain in Israel or did she come?
No. They lived in Brooklyn. And we stayed with her for a few months. And it was too cold. And I said, "California, here I come." We literally hitched a ride with a person that we know.
In what part of Brooklyn did you live?
Pardon?
In what part of Brooklyn?
I remember the address, Logan Street. I don't know what part it was. I didn't care. God, those were different days in the United States. Would you believe? We had friends in Queens, I think. And when my husband went back to Israel, I used to take the subway to Queens, come back at midnight on the subway. A 17-year-old skinny girl. And I had no fear. I guess nobody had fear. Now, with illegals and all that.
And what was your first impression when you got to the United States?
I loved it. It's a free country. Completely different than Europe, thank God. Used to be, anyhow.
And so you mentioned that you left Brooklyn because you didn't, the weather was not the...
I was freezing. I used to wear 2 pairs of flannel pajamas and on top of it jeans because I couldn't stand it. Look, I was a weak girl always because I didn't have any nutrition the first 4 years of my life.
And did you already knew people in California?
No, we didn't know anybody. But
and
we met people. Somebody told us go to Fairfax. So we went there. And that was the beginning, and that's it.
And how did it feel getting to California?
Wonderful. First, I have a picture. We went, it was in January '59. I don't know how we got to Long Beach, but it was like 80 degrees. The first thing my husband did was buy me a bikini. What's there not to like when you're 17?
And what did you do once you were here in California?
Well, we had two friends with us, but we separated. My husband started working in a gas station, and somebody told me who was it? Well, I studied computers. There was on Wilshire Boulevard, New Western, there was an IBM building, and they were the only ones then in the country. And who was the guy that gave me that information? I remember the last name Green, but I can't remember, put him in the right place. Anyhow, he told me, go there and I'll tell you who to talk to. And they registered me in the program. And I studied computers, and I got a job right away. But then I was run over by a car when I was 19. And my legs were broken, my spine. But then I got pregnant when I was like 6 months pregnant with Albert. I laugh at it because it was painful, but it was funny. Because all our friends asked my husband, how did you get her pregnant? I had a cast up to here. It was fun. You know, when you're a good person and you're an honest person and I love life. And nobody will beat us. Remember Jeff Schneider.
And how were you received here in California?
What?
So how was it interacting with other people here in California? Did you made friends with other people?
What do you mean, how was it? It was easy. My husband opened up a gas station and another one, and I had babies, one after the other. In 4 years, I had three sons, less than 4 years. And it was wonderful. We always had all the Israeli friends that came. They knew about us, came over. It was wonderful.
So it was a tight community then.
Yep.
And now, so do you currently receive reparations?
I get somewhat, yeah. What did I put the controller for the heater? It's kind of hot in here, isn't it? Or maybe, can I open the window?
Oh, we can stop. Yeah.
No, don't move. It's okay.
Do you receive reparations?
I received, I didn't want to take it. I said, I'm not taking money for my father's blood. But my mom, bless her soul, she actually registered me and did everything for me. And then all of a sudden somebody comes to my apartment and tells me, wait a minute, somebody brought me a big basket of fruit and chocolate from the mayor of Los Angeles. I said, well, what did I do? They said, but you were in the concentration camp. I said, yeah, how do you know? Well, we have it written. So my mom did it. Yeah, I've been receiving. It isn't much. You couldn't live on it. $700 a month. I mean, what do you do first? Pay rent? Pay for your car? Go to the doctor? Buy medicine? What do you do first? But they'll never pay back the money they took. And I don't see why not.
How do you perceive the reparations then?
What?
How do you perceive the German government given the reparations?
The pieces of shit. They should have given back everything they stole. And if their grandparents used it, too bad. Not a good excuse. I don't forgive, and I don't forget. And that really is the sum of what I feel. I don't forgive, I don't forget, and I'd love to punish them.
do you think more should have been done by the German government now?
No. I tell you the truth. They should have done it a long time ago. I'm not a beggar. I'm not going to ask them for anything. In fact, the money I get from them, I don't use it for myself. Those are gifts for my grandchildren. Literally. I don't use a penny for me. I say Hitler's giving them a present. If he only knew. How's that, huh?
And to what did you attribute your survival?
A strong mother. I'm strong. And luck.
And did your religious observance changed after the war?
Well, I didn't have any before the war. You know what? Because I am who I am. And remember, people, you are who you are. No matter what you would love to have been or what you like to be, sorry, you can't change it. You are who you are. I'm not religious, but I buy kosher meat because I know it's cleaner. And let the rest of the world eat shit. I'm awful, aren't I? Well, Steven Spielberg said I should be in the movies.
And do you think did your experiences in the Holocaust, if any, do you think that they impacted your experience as a mother?
They could, yeah, if they're weak. But none of us were weak. My mom wasn't weak. I'm not weak. You know, my kids heard it only when they were 14, 15. I would never have told them, but I don't remember how they found out. But they're pretty normal kids, very normal, in fact. Very excelling, you know, everybody.
And do you remember when was it that they learned about your experience?
That what?
Do you remember how it was when they learned about your experience during the war?
No, I mean, it's okay. They should know. Nobody cried. Nobody's a wimp in my family.
And did you made any research about your experiences
No.
during the...
No. It's enough. I know what I know, that's enough. I heard a lot of stories. No.
And are you involved in any Holocaust-related activities?
No. I mean, I went to the USC, you know, thing, but it's repetitious, first of all. And to see all these women, you know, feeling sorry, no.
And in what ways have your experiences affected you?
Made me stronger. Much stronger, much more powerful than most people. Very stubborn.
And have you encountered Holocaust denial?
Not yet. They're lucky I didn't encounter them. I would have shot them or put a knife in their mouth. I wouldn't cry.
What are your thoughts on Holocaust denial?
They're idiots, but they should be eliminated. Now I talk like a German, huh?
And did you experience anti-Semitism after the war?
Only one time in Germany. I was 5 years old.
And not again since then? And what is your perception of anti-Semitism in the world today?
Look, do you know what the Bible is? Who wrote the Bible? Okay. You know who invented the polio vaccine? A Jew. You know who invents all the high tech, the best high tech, whether it's in Silicon Valley or in Tel Aviv? Okay, Jews. I have a couple grandsons in that field. You want to kill that brain, that knowledge? You think you can steal it from me and then use it? No. If people hate because they love to hate, I'm not going to say I feel sorry for them. They're just idiots. And I don't feel sorry for idiots. Am I awful? No? Oh, I thought I would be.
And what would you like to tell future generations?
Stand up for yourself. Don't be afraid. You are who you are. I'm not saying every Jewish person is great. Of course not. We're just people, human beings. But all we want is peace. And don't go to church, don't go to the mosque, and then go out and kill. What is the point of it? Who are those creatures? Even Jesus was a good Jewish boy, and he was. You know, I was at the Vatican for 2 weeks. The things that go on over there. Do you know that Hitler used to deposit his money in the Bank of the Vatican? And there was a show on TV yesterday on the History Channel. The mafia, the Italian mafia, the big bosses, with cahoots with the Vatican, opened up the Bank of the Vatican. They take money in all the churches and you drop the few pennies or whatever, the few dollars. You think God will love you more. You idiots. Why do you think in the Vatican, it was 2 weeks every day, the poor Italian idiots are sitting outside the wall begging? So I gave them $1, $5. I thought they were hungry. You know what they did with it? They went inside and gave it to one of those big fat priests with all the expensive stones, rings. And they kissed his hand. Oh, God almighty, idiots. It shows you that most people in the world are idiots. You know what God is? If you're a good person, if you're a decent person, that's what God is. The rest is baloney. They're full of shit. And the churches, they give money. Huh. And they repeat everything like idiots. Please. I don't go to temple and I don't go to church. I don't need anybody to tell me what God is. God is inside of you, if there is a God inside of you. But these creatures are empty. These bad people, the stupid people. What do you think of that?
Yeah.
Is it too strong for a survivor? Write it down.
Yeah. And are there any last things that you want to add?
The only thing I want to add is for humanity to be better. Good people, be good. Really good. Don't hate so much. And you think if you're going to destroy, let's say, the Jewish people or the Chinese or anybody, would it make your life better? Why? How would it make it better? Let them tell me how. That's all.
Thank you so much, Pnina.
Thank you. I know I'm not the usual survivor. I know. But maybe because I was a child and I absorbed everything. And I saw the injustice of everything. And maybe because I didn't have to worry about getting food, I knew my mom would get it for me. You know, fight for survival. That's me.
Well,
Thank you so much. Let me know how I can get all of this stuff. I'm very dumb. I mean, I can use the computer. Yes, I can, of course. But the things that my grandkids know, I don't want to know.
but we will make sure that you receive everything.
Okay. Do you have my kids' information,
Yes.
Albert and Jesse?
Yes, I do.
Okay.
Thank you
If
so
you have them, then it's good.
Thank you so much.
No.
So who's in this photograph?
That's my grandmother Miriam. She was my father's mother.
And how were you able to obtain this photograph?
She sent it to me. That was in Vienna after the war.
So who's in this photograph?
My father, Albert, and his first cousins. That was in Warsaw, Poland, 1938, 7.
And what happened to them during the war?
Some of them survived, most of them survived.
And did they stay in Poland after the war? Or did
No,
they-
everybody came either to Israel or to America.
And how were you able to obtain this photograph?
One of my aunts gave it to me. My father's sister.
Thank you. Can you tell me a little bit about this photograph?
Yes. So this was end of June 1944, after D-Day. The Germans knew they were losing the war. For some reason, they thought if they kill all the little children, they're going to win the war or be big shots. And they actually shot a few. And I got angry. And I said to the Nazi, "Why are you shooting my friends? These were my friends." And he said, "Paula," and he hit me slapped me so hard that I flew out of my place where I was sitting. And my mom grabbed me and ran away with me. I mean, didn't run away far away, but just took me and got out, and the other kids were murdered. And my mom told me always, their mothers just stood there like dummies and cried. Didn't beg, didn't ask, didn't say a word. They just stood there. And that's the difference.
And how did you obtain this photograph?
Oh, now, it's a known fact that the Germans documented everything they did, even when they put people in the gas chamber or in the ovens. Now, this was done, as I said, right after D-Day, and the Russians were coming from the Eastern Front, and the Germans knew they were very close, and so they just dumped everything into garbage cans and ran away. They literally ran away like chicken. So my aunt Genia, the one that passed away a couple of years ago at 97, she was 16 or 17 at that time, and she saw what they did and everything. So she went to the garbage cans and took out pictures that were, that she knew the people.
And she gave you the photograph?
She gave me this. There were a lot of pictures most of the photos that I have it. I didn't think of it. But the truth is, I can't even lift it, so I should do it really for my grandkids and great-grandkids.
Thank you.
But
Tell me about this photograph.
that was December 10th, 1947. I was 7 years old. After that, in January, no, actually the end of December of 47, we went on a train to Marseille, France, and from there we boarded a ship to Israel. So that's why it's special to me.
And how old were you here?
I was 7.
Thank you. Tell me about this photograph.
Well, my younger brother Josh was born and I was very excited. Our brother Sam is to my right, and I took care of them
And where was this taken?
in Tel Aviv.
Do you remember
Everything, everything, every moment.
that day? And how did you feel about being an older sibling?
Wonderful. I was like a mother to Josh, especially. He always says, "I'm your first baby, right?"
Thank you. Tell me about this photograph.
Well, that's when we got married. It was 1958, yeah.
And can
And
you,
you know what? You know, now people, I mean, my daughters-in-law and everybody, I know what a big deal they make and spend so much money, my money. I worked on Saturday. I went Saturday evening to Klein's. There was a store on south of 36th Street, near 14th Street. Bought this dress for $49. I still have it in my closet. We got married Sunday. Monday I went to work. And people said, "You didn't go for your honeymoon?" I said, I'm having a honeymoon every day. I'm with my husband. Remember that, girls. The rest is such bullshit, such a waste of money. Well, you want to go to bed with your man, you want to have to go fly to Hawaii? Or God knows where else? Why? And maybe the airplane won't make it? It's stupid. But it's a different world now. I didn't know that people should have it so good. It was okay. I was happy. And I'm not sorry for 1 second for what I didn't do or did do. I'm a happy person that I survived.
Great.
And remember, stepfather is not your father.
tell me about this photograph.
Well, it was Albert had his circumcision, and she came from New York with my little brother. We stayed 2 weeks, and she came to be with us. And she held him, and it was wonderful
Was this the first time that she met him?
that she met my son.
Yeah.
Of course, he was only 8 days old.
Tell me about this photograph.
But this was in my other apartment. I used to cook all the time. And everybody came over every weekend. And that's my mom. This is Jeremiah, Micah's father, and Joshua and Jonah that you met here.
And when was this photograph taken?
Jonah's now 28, and here he seems to be, 10, like 18 years ago or more.
And it was the family who would come to when you were cooking, or would you invite anyone else?
No, they didn't have to be invited. They just came. That's how it was in Israel and in Europe. You didn't call, first of all, we didn't have a phone. But you didn't send out an invitation. You just came over, and there was always food, something. Are you kidding? My cousin, she was in the Navy, the Israeli Navy. She one night at 11 p.m. she shows up with 10 other Navy people, guys and girls. She shows up. My mother's first cousin. She said, "Sarah, we are hungry." She had sardines and she had rye bread, and they all slept on the floor. We didn't have enough blankets to put. They just slept. Those were the good years, really. Better than going to a fancy at the Four Seasons, and trust me, it's better because you're young, you're healthy, and you're happy. And you don't need more than that. Not really, really.
Thank you. Can you tell me about this photograph?
Yeah, that was my mother's 90th birthday. And this is at the Brentwood Country Club, which Jesse belongs to. He made her a party with Jesse's 3 sons.
Can you name them?
Yeah, Joshua, Jeremiah, and Jonah. I can see. That's Joshua. Jonah, is it Jeremiah? Yeah.
And you mentioned that it was for her 90th birthday.
It was her 90th birthday, yeah.
When was it?
She was born in 1920, so 90 years afterwards. But it was a year before she passed. She passed in, that was like 2011, 2010 or 2011. I'm thinking when she passed away, either it was 11 or 12.
Tell me about this photograph.
This was somebody's bar or bat mitzvah. No, I don't remember what it was. Hold on. Well, these are the grandchildren I had at that time, and am I in it? Yes, I am in it, yes. So it was somebody's, I think, Tamra's bat mitzvah. Is it Tamra? Yeah. Can I move it? No, okay. Yeah, it was somebody's bat mitzvah. I think Tamra with the blue. And now she is, how old is Tamra? She's, I think tomorrow is her birthday. She'll be 27 or 8. She's the surgeon.
And was this here in Los Angeles?
During what?
Was this here in Los Angeles?
Yeah, in the valley, yeah. It was a big party.